going. Yes, namaste. Welcome, everyone. I'm Ankur Patel, Director of Outreach at Hindu University of America. We have President of HUA, Sri Kalyan Vishwanathan, with us today to discuss and go from outsider to insider, exploring Hindu studies at HUA. Please share with us where you're zooming in from in the chat if you haven't already. Kalyanji is actually joining from Los Angeles, and I'm hosting from Los Angeles, but on other ends of town. Please share with us where you're joining from, and we're going to have a great webinar today. We have a few other student panelists. That's awesome that they are joining. Jai Shankarji from Minneapolis. Awesome. Truptiji, glad to have you join us as well. Rick Pat, thank you for joining from last night and again today. Dilip Madanji, welcome, welcome. Chandu Patel, yes. Shrikantji from Sydney, Australia. Glad that you're here. We even have some note takers, some AI. I think I'll remove those folks though, unless that's actually you. All right. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. And we're gonna go on a little bit of a journey. And we know Hinduism is described differently by many different people, but it is one of the, if not the world's oldest living tradition. And it's not well understood, especially from the Westerner perspective. And I went through that. So to truly study Hinduism means going beyond the surface level views and stereotypes. It means exploring its texts, philosophies, practices, and ways of knowing through both insider and outsider perspectives. So Hindu studies opens up this rich landscape. It offers new insights into the tradition, and it continues to shape lives and societies across the globe. And so we have a few students with us. I think we'll have some faculty in, but of course, we are lucky to have Sri Kalyan Vishwanathan, President of Hindu University of America, as our featured guest, panelist, speaker, leader, Guruji for today. We know Kalyanji holds actually a master's degree in computer and information science from Ohio State University, bachelor's degree in electronical and electronics engineering from Birla Institute of Technology and Science. But it was his 21-year association with Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati, the founder of the Arsha Vidya Gurukulam, and that really put Kalyanji on this path. He was also the president of DCF, Dharma Civilization Foundation. He's been active in the Dallas area for decades now, and we're glad that he is leading Hindu University of America now with a 1,000-year vision and a work ethic that matches. Kalyanji, let me hand it to you to give us some context for today.
Okay, great. Namaste, everybody. Namaste to the audience. Namaste to my fellow panelists who have joined. What I'm going to do today is briefly discuss the difference between an insider's view of Hindu Dharma and an outsider's view of Hindu Dharma. Okay, and that's the topic. And why we should know both. And first of all, why we should be able to distinguish between the two, understand how the two are different, and being able to at least recognize that there are these two paradigms, two different ways of understanding, conceptualizing, mapping, and speaking about Hindu Dharma, Sanatana Dharma. Okay. Now, I have a few panelists with me. They're all fellow students. I mean, they're students. They've all taken the Orientation to Hindu Studies course relatively recently. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through about 15 slides, 15 slides. And I will pause at various points and ask the students, to offer a perspective. If any of them, if they want to offer a perspective, they could. Okay, and for the students, when you first speak, you can briefly introduce yourself. Okay, you can say who you are, what you do, and then where you're from, and then you can start the conversation. All right. So for the audience, thank you very much for joining. I hope that you will take this orientation to Hindu studies course seriously, and join the course. If you have not already done it. Okay, with that little preamble, I'm going to start my um, webinar. Just a moment, the slideshow, sorry. So the as a course, okay, it is a course. It's about it takes about 10 to 11 weeks. It's going to start in October, and Ankur will share the link shortly. But I'd like to begin by just reading the vision and mission of Hindu University of America. Vision: promoting dialogue across disciplines, cultures, and civilizations, while enabling self-discovery, conscious evolution, and harmony. The Hindu University of America will set the standard for the study of Hindu Dharma. Okay, that's our vision. That's the vision with which we are working. The mission is Hindu University of America provides education and knowledge systems based in Hindu thought, involving critical inquiry, ethics, and self-reflection, committed to fostering the culture and traditions of Hindu Dharma in an atmosphere of academic excellence and freedom. It prepares students for service, leadership, and global engagement. Okay, so that's the vision and mission of the university, and that is what has been inspiring us, getting us up every morning, and we're working towards creating an institution that will hopefully last a millennium. Okay, so that's our kind of our vision. Okay, now I'm going to address the question: why do we need Hindu studies? Okay, and I'm going to do it with one example. Now, this is just an example. Okay, it's not the whole of it. It's just one little piece of it. And this example will, however, illustrate the challenge that we as a community are facing. Okay, so this is a slide which describes the contemporary paradigm of world history. Okay, and this paradigm looks like this. Okay, ancient, classical, medieval, modern, and postmodern. And historians break up world history into these sort of broad phases of world history, and they represent, taken together, a paradigm, a way of studying world history. So if you look at modernity, which is where we will start, because the whole thing, the paradigm was defined in modernity. Okay, for example, the ancient people did not label themselves ancient. They didn't write a book saying we're all the ancient people of this world. They didn't do that. Okay, somebody else called them ancient. Not did the classical people, nor did the medieval people. They didn't label themselves medieval. They thought they were the most modern, obviously. And it is only looking back, standing at a particular point in time, that you get the privilege of labeling prior eras. Okay, is that clear? So it is the moderns who labeled. So who are these moderns? The modern humanity, modernity, which was characterized by science and a belief in science. When I say scientism, it's different than the science itself. It's a kind of an extraordinary belief in science, and therefore truth and knowledge and reason and objectivity and history and progress. All of these ideas were generated in modernity, and modernity belongs to Enlightenment era thinking, which originated in Europe. And standing here, they created this whole thing called world history. Standing in modernity, somewhere in the 18th century, 19th century, time frame, they created this paradigm of world history in which they looked at the immediately preceding era in world history and called it medieval. They said medieval was a dark age. It was characterized by monotheism and conflict, survival, salvation is very important, Renaissance, Reformation, all this happened in the medieval era. And if you think about it, this medieval and the modern represent a great schism or a break in world history, according to the Western experience. And this, you know, the medieval thinking was done, and modernity breaks away from that. It breaks away. Are you able to hear me? Modernity breaks away from this medieval period with a very significant rupture, and all of a sudden science and technology and all the innovations and industry and everything develops. All of a sudden the world comes out of the dark ages into the modern era, and this emergence from the dark ages into modernity is actually called in European language the Enlightenment. It's called the Enlightenment. Okay. And of course, the moderns didn't stop there. They called the previous era the classical era. And this is their old representation of the classical, meaning the Greco-Roman culture, okay? Plurality, polytheism, a lot of mythology and philosophy and art and music, etc. Of course, characterized by slavery too, unfortunately, that period. And then the ancients was characterized by paganism, nature worship, fire worship, agriculture, the five elements, worshipping water and air and fire and, the Panchabhutas and so on. And then, of course, there were a lot of traditions and accompanied by superstition, shamanism, primitivity, and so on and so forth. And of course, now we live in the postmodern world. The postmodern world is characterized by skepticism, subjectivity, relativism, complexity, a kind of an extraordinary obsession with power, oppression, and it's often very accusatory. So you get the contemporary woke culture, you get it's a postmodern phenomenon. But for those of you who can place this template of world history, currently the US, the United States of America, as we all know it, is going through a great convulsion. There's a great polarization in America. And the polarization, no matter what language they use to describe the polarization, is really a reflection of this great battle between the medieval thought and modern thought. Okay, and it's a kind of a replay of a conflict that raged in Europe intellectually for a few hundred years. Is getting played out again. Okay, if you can see it, you can see it. Okay, you can tell that that's what's going on again. Now, this paradigm of progressivism, right? What it does is it moves, it progresses. It's called progressivism. In the imagination of the moderns, okay, the progressivism has progressed, has moved beyond, has evolved from religion, falsehood, mythology, faith, superstition, tradition, quaint notions of sacred and savage and regressive, primitive, the Oriental, God, and spiritual and soul. And then now it has come into science, truth, history, reason, rationality, modernity, secular, civilized, progressive, advanced, the West, the great West, the powerful West, the world processes, material, body, and so on. So kind of a scientific materialism that has departed, that has deliberately broken away from a kind of a primitive religiosity and a belief and superstition and so on and so forth. And this is called progressivism. And there is a backlash to this progressivism, and there is a regression. So there are two terms you should understand: progress and regress. Okay, and interestingly, America is kind of regressing from their own sense of progress. Okay, Now, if you look at Hindu history from this paradigm, that is the mainstream paradigm, which I'm also going to call the outsiders paradigm. Outsiders paradigm. Okay. The history of Hindus, of the Hindu people, the Hinduism history. How do you reconstruct that history? Well, this is what it looks like from the outsiders paradigm. You break it into the classical period up to 1000 C. You break it into, it includes the Aryan invasion of India. The Aryans bring Sanskrit and India's literature into India. And there is the whole racialization of the people of India. You get the caste system and its primitive form, Varna and Jati, and it's the modern story. And then comes the Islamic period. And this is in the contemporary reconstruction, this is presented as a benign intervention. Hindus convert voluntarily to Islam, millions and millions of them, resulting in the constitution of new states like Pakistan and Bangladesh and so on. But Islam brings a brotherhood, an equality, an egalitarianism, a breath of fresh air to the, sort of restrictive, constraining caste system that was the product of Hindu thought. And it results in some sort of wonderful syncretic culture. It brings prosperity to India, and it brings Islamic art and architecture like the Taj Mahal, the Red Fort, and such wonderful architect, Qutub Minar, and architectural productions and so on. Then comes the British period, the colonial era, and England brings its own version of enlightenment into India. It modernizes India. It brings technology, engineering. It brings the English language. And my God, what would we Hindus do without the English language? We would have been stuck in the dark ages. Look at us. We're talking to each other in the English language, right? And, we finally got free. We attained freedom from primitivity, paganism, barbarism, and savagery. And, lots of Hindu Reformation movements emerged from this interaction. We were able to finally get rid of things like sati and so on. But caste, we've not really gotten rid of it. We've actually deeply entrenched it in our society. And of course, the British were instrumental in the unification and the birth of India as a state, as a nation, because we were just a bunch of warring tribes for thousands of years until we were unified by the British. And of course, there is the modern post-independent India, the secular state, the rapid westernization and adoption of science and technology, upliftment of the downtrodden, the scheduled, oppressed, depressed castes, and so on. And this is the narrative of Hindu history from the mainstream paradigm. Okay. So in the ancient period, the classical period, we get the Sanskrit literature, which is all kind of oppressive, dominant, fully based on caste and so on. And the right way to read Hindu scriptures, according to this paradigm, is you must read discrimination and Brahmanism and oppression into every text. And the Islamic period, the way we should read the Islamic period of history is this: we must say that there was no violence at all. It never happened. We must hide all the evidence of destruction of temples, rewrite history to present the Muslim rulers of India as extraordinary rulers. Oh my God, Akbar the Great, Shah Jahan and Jahangir and Aurangzeb, fantastic rulers of India. They even built temples. They built temples for the Hindus, etc., etc. And of course, the British, they were even more beneficial to the Hindu people. They brought the railways, the postal service, and law and order, and brought a new army. And they bequeathed democracy and the constitution to India. They created the Indian Administrative Service. And once and for all, they freed India from Brahminical oppression and all its social evils. And of course, modern period, the way you read the modern period is this resurgence of Hinduism. You must frame it as a dangerous period. The Hindus are the dangerous enemies of India, Bharat, and the whole world. And this Hindutva movement as an evil, regressive threat. And you must regurgitate Western theories about India and teach them in schools and poison the minds of young children, and and lead them into believing that Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, is mankind's worst enemy. Okay, this is a paradigm. Okay, this is a paradigm. It is the mainstream paradigm. It is what is taught in your schools. It's what your children are learning, whether you like it or not, whether explicitly or not. This is what is being slowly indoctrinated into the young minds. And I'm talking both in India, it's happening in the US, it's happening around the world. I mean, nobody's exempt from this. Now, in relation to this, this is the age of classical Hinduism, an era of poverty, racial and caste conflict, discrimination, and violence. Then comes the age of external interventions, the benign and beneficial attempts to emancipate India from its own native darkness, its inequality, its superstition, and oppression. And modernity, the age of science and technology and the remaking of India as a Western-style democracy. Okay, so this is the mainstream paradigm. In contrast to this, we have the Hindu paradigm, the Hindu history as per the Hindu paradigm. Okay. Now let's take a look at the same periods. We'll use the same periodization. Classical up to 1000 years, 1000 CE. It was an expanding and prosperous society. It was an extraordinary literary society which had an output, literary output that remains unsurpassed for its period. There was a succession of great successful empires, Hindu empires, Buddhist empires, and so on. There was a great flowering of arts and culture, and there was mobility in the Varna Jati system. Then came the Islamic period, where the Hindu society was terrorized and devastated. Massive destruction of temples, loss of higher education, Nalanda burnt for 6 months, Takshashila destroyed, Vikramashila, the universities, Odantapuri, Ratnagiri, Pushpagiri, all these universities were destroyed. Loss of higher education, poverty, displacement, people were running helter-skelter all over the place. Jatis and Varnas are on the run in apat dharma mode. Then came the British period, completely colonized and impoverished, a massive extraction of wealth from India that was transferred to Britain, massive increase in the depressed communities, impoverished, illiterate communities. Jatis and Varnas got recast as a caste system. Then comes modernity. Confused people trying to reconstitute themselves, mixed up, internally conflicted. Again, future what kind of India must be built for the future? Of course, caste-based politics, economics is entrenched, and of course, there is a whole caste question that is constantly rising its head. So, in this Hindu paradigm, in the classical period, you had the wonderful Sanskrit literature, and you, of course, got your traditional social structures, and of course, there you have the Greek and Chinese accounts of classical Hindu history. Then the Islamic period, the Hindus are running helter-skelter. They fall mostly silent. They don't write anything. You can only find about what happened in India by reading Islamic writings, because Hindus breathe not a single word. Advaitins start pretending all is unreal and temporary. It's all Maya. And the Vaishnavas start praying for an intervention by the avatar. Please save us from this extraordinary misery that has befallen us. The British come into India and launch a completely new discourse. They reframe the Brahmins as the primordial oppressors and villains of India, and constitute an economic wreckage unlike any seen in the entire world history. And of course, from a very weak place, India and Hindus launch a struggle for political freedom. And modern India, most Indians keep gaslighting themselves into self-blame. Something must have been wrong with us. We must have done a lot of papa. That's why we got oppressed for 1,000 years. And of course, science and technology is a vehicle for advancement. Most of us are in this domain. Science, technology, engineering, finance, business, management, etc., etc. Of course, we have deeply abandoned the humanities. We've said we don't want to have anything to do with the humanities. Humanities don't pay well. They're not good, don't make for good careers. So we abandon that space, and so therefore we don't get to tell our story. As other outsiders get to tell the story, sitting in various fields, and we don't know what to do to recover our old culture and tradition and civilizational paradigm, or should we just simply copy the West and reinvent ourselves as in the image of the Western civilization? So this is the age of classical Vedic Hinduism, an expanding, creative, and prosperous society. The Hindu Dark Age, a period of decline, downward mobility, and devastation that's obscured from our view. And finally, the age of recovery and restoration and reconstitution and return to prosperity. I'm going to stop for minutes. And what I have done is I've just created two examples, or examples of two different narratives. And these are narratives of world history. Okay, one is a mainstream, what we call the outsiders narrative of world history, and the other is the insiders narrative of Hindu history. It's not, okay, I'm going to say the outsiders narrative of Hindu history and the insiders narrative of Hindu history, and I've described the two in juxtaposition with each other to develop a contrast between the two. Okay. Now, this only pertains to history. Okay. Now we can take this contrast that we've developed to other domains, to domains of philosophy, to culture, to anthropology, to sociology, to political science, to economics, to many other disciplines, psychology. Every discipline you take, there is space for discerning the insider's worldview and compare it and contrast it with the outsider's worldview. Okay, so that's all my point, and I've illustrated with this example. I'm going to pause here and invite some comments, anything my fellow panelists would like to share based on what I've just said so far in this webinar. Okay, so who would like to begin? Raise your hand and unmute yourselves, and you can. Yeah, Jaishankar. Yeah, and then Pramod. Yeah.
Oh, Jaishankar ji. You go ahead, Jaishankar ji.
No, Pramod ji, go ahead. I think you put your hand up first, please.
No, that's okay. So, Namaskar. My name is Pramod Ramdasi. I'm with New Jersey, and just to give a quick introduction, I'm in IT profession, like many of us here. I attended this orientation course with Kalyanji, and when he spoke, I don't think so anything is remaining to add on that. But I'm just adding as a student from my prospect, what made me to attend this course, and then just a couple of lines about what I learned and different prospect, right? So the whole idea for me getting attracted for this course is to understand the academic aspect of this course, because many of us has some background of Hinduism, and we what learned is at home from our fathers, parents, and grandparents and whatnot. Being Gen 1 here, there is a slight difference for us to go back with our next generation. So the whole idea for me to understand this academic prospect, because we never learn or studied about that, even back in India. What we learned is the science, what Kalanji has mentioned, is so we have been taught the Hindu or Hinduism, I should use that word in Western context, is with the different scale altogether. So the science, and then we cannot measure current Hindu with the Western thought process or so. So I think what different parameters what we learned so far is the Western thought process. We learned the Hinduism in their framework. So this course definitely gave a different prospect, or with example, for me to think in different way, that they always think of progressivism, whereas the Hindu Sanskriti or culture is in more in cyclic manner. So it was a great example. What are the standards of studies, what we are learning, and again with the context of from a Western side, whatever we learned. I believe this helped me a lot, and nothing much to add. Major things my fellow colleagues will add it on that. So it must. It's a great experience for me. Dhanyavad.
Jaishankar.
Namaste, Kalyanji. Namaste, everyone. Truptiji and Pramodji, great to see you once again. Ankurji, we met a few weeks ago, so nice to see you again. And for all the attendees, I'm just very glad that you're here. And hopefully, I'll be able to impress upon you that the class that I took with Kalyanji was great. But I want to address the question at hand, which is that of the outsider view versus insider view. And to all the attendees, just the basic difference between the outsider view and the insider view was not something that I'd even remotely considered um, when even thinking or reading about Sanatana Dharma. And by way of introduction, my name is Jay Shankar. I'm a Keralite, brought up in Mumbai, currently living in Minneapolis, and I work in medtech. So I guess that's one more to the count of science and technology, and one more lost from a humanities perspective. So having attended the class and once again having got a refresher from Kalyanji in the last few minutes, I just want to talk about the outsider versus the insider view, which is Kalyanji. I think that's what you were asking about earlier on. And from what I understand, and I'm really glad about that refresher now, so the outsider view of Hindu Dharma is often framed through the Westerner's lens, meaning anthropology and theology obviously borrowed from Abrahamic traditions, right? So it tends to treat Dharma more as religion, and religion with fixed dogmas and external markers, often reducing living traditions to categories like myth, right? Or ritual, or the much reviled caste, which is not even ours, but anyway. So the outsiders' paradigms usually remain analytical, but they're unfortunately alienated from the inner logic of Sanatana Dharma. They study about Hindus, but not as Hindus. And and contrastingly, an insider's view, and this is one of the biggest learnings for me, the insider's view begins with lived categories of dharma. For example, if you take the course, you'll learn about Shraddha, you'll learn about Sampradaya, you'll learn about Parampara, Anubhava, and so on. So the insider's view understands dharma not just as a belief that it's made out to be, but more so as something which sustains, something which uplifts, and something which aligns with the greater eternal order. Very importantly, now that I'm starting to talk about all of this with my kids, the insider's view sees itihasas, Ramayana and Mahabharata, and our Puranas not merely as myths, right? It's often called mythology, and Kalyanji will get into that word in great detail. But it treats the insider's view treats itihasas and Puranas as sources of living wisdom, and not just something that you had flying people and so on and so forth from the perspective of a Harry Potter kind of a story. Interestingly, kids will believe more of the Harry Potter, but not really give any belief to our Ramayana and Mahabharata. That's just the world we're in, and I think us as parents have a huge role to play in correcting that. The insider's approach is experiential, it's integrative, and it's rooted in conviction that Sanatana Dharma is a complete civilizational paradigm and not merely a subset of someone else's bigoted framework. I use that word carefully. So, in short, Kalyanji, what I really understood is that the outsider analyzes, the insider realizes, and you're enabling us to that end. The outsider classifies and the insider participates. Once again, you and the HUA is enabling us to that end. The outsider speaks about, and us as the insiders need to learn to speak from within. That's what I understand from what you've just presented, as well as my very recent experience from the Orientation to Hindu Studies course. And I am hugely grateful to the HUA and you, Kalyanji. Dhanyavad.
Right, terrific. I think I would not hesitate to say you're probably endorsing the course to everybody in the audience here as well. All right, Triptiji, go ahead, please.
Namaste, everyone. I'm so glad I'm invited for this panelist, and good to see some of my older students. Anybody who is listening here, whichever part of the world you are in, I would like to say that if you don't go for any course with Hindu University of America, at least you have to do this course, just one course, because once you will this course, I think you will realize that how you should even empower HUA. It is not for you. It is a big investment for future generations wherever we are. That's the one of the thing. The second thing, most of us, if you are not second generations American or Westerner with Indian ancestry, every one of us are exposed to the outsider view of Hindu Dharma at some point of time. So while growing up, we all embrace Hindu Dharma tradition, either through our family, the sampradaya that we believe in. Then we also look for some of the critical question of our life, and we deep dive into the philosophical aspects of Hindu traditions. But somewhere this external view will start shaping our understanding through our exposure to the social media, through the textbook. The other challenge what we are facing, even the people who are in India, your kids are also getting the same exposure what my kids in America are getting. It's this outsider view, how they review or view Hindu Dharma traditions. So these slides right now Kalyanji has shared at least have given you the idea that we all are calling our civilization is ancient civilization. But we all know, whatever the part of Hindu Dharma we know, do we really believe it that that culture was really ancient? Because we are far superior if the culture has figured out how to conduct its body, how to conduct its mind, and what to do its for soul. When you can do it, right? When you are thriving civilization. If I don't have enough money, if I don't have enough food on my plate, I'm not going to think about what's going to happen to my life in the next birth, right? Because I'm struggling. So that civilization has done phenomenal work with various philosophies, various darshanas. So now when we look back, do we even agree that that civilization was ancient or not? I never questioned this thing until this course. And so that gives me the new perspective. Now I'm encountering, the outsiders like Westerners, my kids who are in high schools or in college. How do we go ahead and put or defend when they throw these kind of narratives on caste? They talk about sati, where they talk about dowry, because we are struggling between these two views. We don't have clarity on how outsiders are thinking and what exactly is insider view, because our insider view is so much clouded by what my guru has given. What is my shraddha? What is my devotion? Which is bhakti. Nothing is wrong with that. But do we even have the clarity that what is my insider view for Hindu Dharma? So these course actually empowers. It empowers you with a lot of reading material. You have to work, because when you will work for 90 minutes or 2 hours with Kalyanji, throughout the week, you will have really a hard reading material that you have to read, you have to watch some videos, and maybe you will have some discussion within your group. That will actually generate a lot of questions that probably I don't know enough. And then also it will also empower you that Hindu Dharma, what we know, is actually very powerful. And what I can do by studying more, by understanding even this outsider view, to defend and create this Hindu worldview. So I would definitely endorse this course, that if you have to do only one course, please invest your time and just see what Kalyanji has to offer. And also you will meet lot of good friends as a part of this community, where you can reach out and then figure out your further journey. So I appreciate this time, and I really appreciate HUA for everything that you do. Thank you.
Great, excellent. So thank you to all the panelists here. Okay, Ankur is going to put up the information about the course. Everybody should, please click on it and see if you can. It's supposed to start on October 11th. Please click on it and register for the course. Okay. So now I'm going to take you through a few more slides here. You see, the thing about these two paradigms which I've been referencing, If you look at the world of Hinduism, Hindu Dharma, or Sanatana Dharma, as we call it, there is the outsider and there is the insider. Okay. There is something fundamentally different about the outsider and the insider's language. By using these terms outsider and insider, I'm not referencing a particular person, a particular people, a particular race. I'm not saying Westerners are outsiders. I'm not saying Hindus are insiders. No. You all know many Hindus behave like outsiders to our tradition. Conditioned by an educational system, that has put so much into their heads, and they keep regurgitating outsiders' worldviews. Simultaneously, there are many Westerners who have walked into the world of Hinduism. They have found their way into spirituality, into yoga, into meditation, into bhakti, into music, into ways of practicing Hindus that are, they may call it spiritual, but not religious, they may call it, but there are millions and millions who have found their way into the world of Hinduism. Am I clear about what I'm saying right now? So the insider is not a racial thing, it's not an ethnic thing, nor is the outsider a racial or ethnic or geographical, etc., etc. It all comes down to, what language you use, how you approach the study, what methods you apply, what assumptions you make, etc. It is a wholly intellectual phenomenon. And the outsider is not just an outsider. He's just not outside the world of Hinduism. The outsider the outsider's paradigms arise from other paradigms, so they are, whereas the insiders are within the world of Hinduism, the outsiders belong to Christianity. So there is the Christian critique about Hinduism, okay, which has been going on forever. They are insiders to Islam. That gives you the Islamic critique of Hinduism, which has been going on for thousands plus years. The modernity, Enlightenment's critique of Hinduism, okay, the Marxist critique of Hinduism, Orientalism and its critique of Hinduism, Indology and its framing of Hinduism, and so on. And the outsider is not merely an outsider. They are insiders to other paradigms. And if we don't understand those paradigms, right? If we don't study and understand the paradigms in which outsiders live and where they are coming from, we will not be able to fully comprehend the specific ways in which they are framing Hindu Dharma. Right? Is that clear, everybody? It's a very important point that I'm making here. So the characteristics of these paradigms include an ontology, the language structure, the methodology, the ways in which you study, the axiology, the reasons for studying. What is it you're trying to accomplish by studying Hinduism? When Oxford University studies Hinduism, why are they doing it? When Columbia University studies Sanskrit, why are they doing it? What is the reason? What is their purpose? What is their mental model with which, what's the end? What is the end result, end game? Okay. So if we don't understand the outsider's paradigms, we cannot distinguish our own, because what really happens to us and what has happened to us in the last couple of centuries is that instead of these two paradigms, okay, this is the insider's paradigm, which uses a different ontology. Ontology means a language structure. To study Hinduism through the terms of reference, Hindu terms of reference called, say, for example, moksha, dharma, karma, yoga, brahman, janma, sadhana, jnana, bhakti, Vedanta, pramana, punya, papa, yajna, puja, and so on. which gives us the categories of thought, the building blocks of Hindu thought from within the insider's world. Unfortunately, we got stuck with an outsider's language. And what does this language contain? Contains completely different ideas. Aryan invasion, so it all begins. Brahminism, caste, superstition, Dalits, untouchability, human rights violations, discrimination, nationalism, Hindutva, exploitation, Neo-Vedanta, and so on. And this is a completely different paradigm. It's a different language domain, a different ontology. And if you keep living in this world, you cannot access this world. And if you keep living in this Hindu ashram, like I went to, Arshavidya Gurukulam, or Chinmaya Mission, or any traditional matha, which is a seat of learning within Hinduism, within Hindu Dharma, from a Hindu paradigm, there you will find that they deal very little with this paradigm. You understand what I'm saying? These two worlds are almost two different worlds. And unfortunately, the world we live in, the commingled world of Hindu Dharma in which we live today, and what we are imbibing, is a heady mix of these two paradigms. Okay, so we go to school, college, etc., and we learn a little bit about moksha, we learn about Aryan invasion, we learn about puja, immediately hear about superstition. We hear a little bit of Vedanta, we are taught exploitation. We say pramana, then it's Brahmanism immediately. You know, so we say jnana, then it becomes about Dalits immediately, oppression. Say yajna, and it's some form of Hindutva. Say dharma, it becomes caste. You say karma, it becomes nationalism. You know, you say Brahman, it becomes untouchability. You say Papa, it becomes discrimination. So, in other words, these two language domains are commingled, completely collapsed and commingled. And unless we learn to uncollapse these two, separate them out, and evaluate them independently for what they are and what they enable, and what they promote, what they make possible, what they suppress. In other words, give both paradigms its due and understand what those paradigms then make possible. Okay, so that is the work of this course, the Orientation to Hindu Studies course. And very briefly, why do we need Hindu studies? After all, we have family traditions, mandirs, rituals, gurus, ashrams. Why do we need academic study of Hindu Dharma? Well, there is a very good reason for it. You know, we want to look at the gap that Hindu studies address. Now, if you're looking for basic knowledge about Hinduism, some worship and practice, some techniques, some kind of spiritual advancement, maybe even some personal transformation, you can make do with family traditions, temples and rituals, ashrams and gurus, and so on. But where academic study becomes critical in a contemporary sense is if you want to go into therapy and counseling, teaching and research, writing and articulation, media, participate in the public square, engage in advocacy and policy, participate in debates and dialogues, represent Hindu Dharma for the world, for the next generation, defense and contestation, what they call apologetics in Christianity, conflict resolution, and take ownership for our narrative. I'm afraid it requires a lot of academic engagement, which is the gap that Hindu studies at HUA is trying to address. And this study will entail inquiry, research, reading, investigation, exploration, dialogue, reflection, thought, observation, and meditation on what you have learned. And it requires you to become somewhat free from already knowing everything, okay? One of the problems with our community is we know a little bit and we think we know a lot. And we have to confront how little we know and how much we don't know, right? And bring a new willingness to learn and see newly, reconsider, reevaluate in the light of new understanding, new facts, and so on. And the purpose of our study is that it will lead us towards knowledge. By knowledge, I mean rigor and depth, give us the tools of exploration and inquiry, give us the skills of articulation, engagement, from a place of expertise and credibility. and it'll transform our lives, our personal life, our lifestyle, and enable us to make a much larger impact, a global social impact. It'll produce clarity, expertise, confidence, and enable us to contribute. And as we advance in our knowledge, skills, and transformation, it'll enable many possibilities for contribution. Okay, what is spelled wrongly? Sorry about that. We can be, obviously academic professors, we can be public intellectuals, consultants in Vastu and Jyotish, Ayurveda and yoga practitioners, teachers in schools and colleges, performing arts, chaplains and counselors, Hindu priests, community leaders, non-profit executives, writers and bloggers, media professionals, all these areas make study of Hindu Dharma. The academic architecture of the university is we have a community education division at the bottom, an undergraduate division that is not yet open, a graduate division that is robust, and an advanced studies division which is not yet open. In the community education division, we offer a la carte courses and, of course, a lot of certificate programs. Undergraduate division, if and when we launch it, will house one or more associate and bachelor's degrees in the future. In the graduate division, we have our flagship Master of Arts, Doctor of Hindu Studies, and PhD programs. And this really prepare future scholars to represent Sanatana Dharma in academic, intellectual, and public environments. And advanced studies really take us into postdoctoral research, deep investigation, writing, publication, papers, books, and so on and so forth. The impact of this university will emerge from the top. Okay, and we hope that the viability of the university will be supported from the bottom of the pyramid. And with that, I'd like to open it up for questions. And the way you ask questions is you type in a question in the Q&A box, okay? Q&A box. And we will take the questions one by one, okay? Ramesh G is asking a big, long question. My God, it'll take me a while to read this question.
Kayanji, I already read it, but he's asking why don't we get more people on board, basically. He goes through some of the history that you did. And is it possible to ask all Hindus to contribute and make this university just like Harvard or Stanford? And that's the aim. One of the things that we're doing is this whole Friends of HUA. Maybe this could be a good pitch if you want to talk about that as well. But that's what Rameshji is asking.
Okay. All right. Yeah, absolutely. Howard didn't get built in a day. It took 400 years approximately to get to where it is today, right? So HUA will also grow into a very eminent, very respectable, and impactful university in the course of time. We're very small today, and certainly we can, we would love to have everybody's participation and contribution in this university. Okay, if there are no more questions, I will ask, there is a second question here. What is that? So many Diwali parties. Yeah, all the classes are recorded and you will be able to view the recordings, absolutely, for any missed lectures. But I will also add that, please try as far as possible not to miss classes and attend the classes. I mean, the classes will be far more valuable than yet another Diwali party, okay? Yeah. All right. Any final comments from the other panelists? If you want to add something, that was the spot. We have another 6 minutes to go. Anything, Jaishankar, anything for you? Yeah.
Sure. I was just trying to summarize my entire experience, Kalyanji. And once again, I just want to, I very strongly believe that the HUA is building a community, for the lack of another term, of us seekers who are grounded in Dharma, and most importantly, equipped with the intellectual rigor to engage the world confidently. And I'm saying that because Ruchiji had asked a question along these lines in the chat. And it's that equipped part that I just said, right? Equipped with the intellectual rigor to engage the world confidently. HUA is helping us for once to be able to do this on our own terms and unapologetically. And as I say that, Kalyanji, I would be remiss if I don't state that your clarity, patience, and depth of knowledge throughout the lecture series made very complex ideas accessible while never really diluting their integrity. So, for anyone who's listening who wishes to move, say, beyond spiritual or superficial is the right word, superficial narratives, and experience or at least begin to experience the living depth of Sanatana Dharma's thought and principles, I think the HUA is the right choice. And more importantly, I think it's a promise. It's a promise that you make to yourself. It's going to be your foundational stone to much more. And personally, for me, absolutely without hesitation, the start of this journey has been transformative. It promises a lot more, and I wholeheartedly invite every one of you, and perhaps even others who are not on this call today, to embark on it. You will not regret it.
Jai Shankarji, can I just ask one thing? Indiraji, your 10-year-old, right?
Yeah,
She participated in the Bhagavad Gita Pariksha, and your wife Aditiji, she's also taking classes. If you want to just make a mention how the family can get involved as well.
this is a very good point. So, Ankurji, thank you for the prompt. So, it started with me being on this course, right? And then even before getting onto this course, we've been discussing Ramayana and Mahabharata in detail. And then I was able to get my daughter into the Bhagavad Gita. But this course and the readings around it and the discussions at home by virtue of this course really helped coalesce a lot of the ideas. And,
Mhm.
for I can genuinely say that I think I've been able to initiate my family in this direction, at least for the next few years. And it's very important. My kids are 10 and 7, and a few years from now is when the woke ideas of the outside will really start getting their hands around the scruff of their neck. And I really hope that we'll be able to at least impart a way of thought to these kids before the outside world gets to them. So that I think is really important in terms of rooting the kids in what is the right narrative, to be able to channelize them towards the right readings and to be able to equip them to actually counter very popular narratives. In fact, my daughter has been already asked at school, "Are you from the oppressor class?" Right? What about caste? What about sati? What about patriarchy? If you think about caste, sati, patriarchy, these three questions our youngsters have no responses to, and you fall flat and you find yourself cornered because everybody says, "Oh, we know your Jim Crow moment was caste, and you guys still have it." Although we as a society, we never really had slavery. That had something to do with division of
Mhm.
labor by way of ability. And the Western societies had slavery, but the tables are being turned against us. So, Ankurji, coming back to your point, if you can use this as a stepping stone to get everybody in your family tuned in a certain way, then now you not only know where you actually come from and what the truth and the reality about all of that is, not from a Westerner's lens, you can really equip them to counter these false narratives and for once start being confident and, like I said earlier, unapologetic about who you are, where you come from, and what your values actually stand for. So, yeah, thank you, Ankurji.
Very
Dhanyawad.
nice. We'll go a little bit longer, Kalyanji. We'll go a little bit longer. Truptiji has something to say. We have a few more questions.
So
But just
Jai Shankarji has covered everything. Yeah, you will probably come out as unapologetic Hindu because I think, when you spend more time in the Western framework, you come out with that no self-doubt. But on one of the other thing I want to add, because people will listen to this webinar later on, even if you are not following Hindu Dharma tradition, even if you are a yoga teacher, if you are a student of world religion, or just you are curious with all the noise around, I think you will bring a lot of value also to the class as a part of the group because you will be able to provide some inputs on how you are viewing the things as an outsider. And for Daisopara also, because Kalyanji has covered that even if we are Hindu, we think our views are insider. No, our views are clouded. So you might be having the outsider view. So it will be useful for everyone, regardless of what you follow, because it's an academic view. It's not kind of a religious view where you will go for the course and then you are converted converted into Hindu. So that's it.
Thank you.
Great.
So there's a question here. What are the rules of the class? Cameras must be on. Yes, cameras must be on. It'll be very interactive. Okay, there'll be the way I conduct my classes is I try to every few minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I will pause and open up space for discussion and dialogue, and we want to be able to see each other and engage with each other. So a lot of the value of the course is really in the dialogue, in the conversations, really speaking. When you hear how other people, when I say other people, your fellow students are processing the material, what are they getting out of it? How are they, how are they assumed and took for granted, how they are giving up and embracing new ideas, and how the course is transformational when you experience it collectively through dialogue. That's really the power of the course. And Ruchiji, please welcome. I don't know how old your kids are, but if they're too young, I don't know if there'll be a distraction, but you got to make that judgment yourself. Okay, next question is Ramesh ji is saying, can we ask the rich and powerful? The rich and powerful don't listen to me, Ramesh ji. The rich and powerful Hindus, they form a club. They learn to form a club. The rich club, the powerful club. It's like a caste, okay, more or less. And they only speak to them each other, and the to penetrate that is quite a task. Yeah,
The other question that he was mentioning on is, why don't we come up with chairs of studies? That's actually the pathway you were on, Kalyanji, with DCF and at GTU in Berkeley, at Irvine. And what it is, we're still working within a Western framework then. If we have a chair of Hindu studies at one of these institutions, they're not able to have these conversations we're able to have with other like-minded people. And so building our own institution is where we're at. And 6-7 years into this journey, we know people are interested, and Kalyanji, this orientation to Hindu studies course is so crucial. I've taken it. I might take it again because I know you've been teaching it every other quarter and you've been refining it and improving it, and just having that space I remember is wonderful. And some of the other classes I've taken as well. But please do consider taking this orientation to Hindu studies course. I dropped it in the chat. It's going to be Saturdays this time. I know you change the days of the week sometime. This last time it was on Friday nights. This time it's going to be on Saturday nights. I guess a good way to spend time if this is what you want to get onto it with. And I also linked a little link for scholarships if you're in Bharat or Africa or South America. There's some opportunities to bring that cost down a little bit. And the poll is still there. If you haven't filled out the poll, let us know if you're interested in taking the course or maybe a whole program. Yeah, so Kalyanji, I think that's it from me. I'll give it back to you, maybe however you want to wrap this up.
No, I think I think out of respect for the audience, we will conclude the webinar now. Okay, please Ankur, put the poll up want, and put the uh, the link to the course, if to and spending an hour with us this morning. We don't take it for granted. And to the panelists, thank you all for joining and participating. Namaste, everybody. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste, everyone. Good luck.
Namaste.